Hey folks, it's Jeremy Kirkland. You're listening to Blammo. How you doing? This is me. This is my podcast. You know what? I'm going to be honest. I'm doing really good. But I was a little bit concerned at the beginning if I should even say I'm doing good. Do you ever feel that way? Where it's like, because we're just so used to everything always being so crappy. And you talk to someone and someone's like, I don't know, man, this thing sucks. And you talk to another person and they're like, oh yeah, this life is just awful. But like deep inside, like you're doing good. I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I got to say that I'm not doing good just so I can be like everyone else. It's a struggle. It's bad out there. It's bad for a lot of folks, for real. But I guess there can be good days, right? Oh God, this isn't a self-help podcast. What am I doing with this intro? I'm going to run right into a wall. I just put myself into a corner. But look, I am doing good. I hope you are all doing good too. Whatever. I had a nice week. I played some music this weekend. I tweaked a few of my speakers. I was moving them in different positions because I'm that idiot. And I even played my guitar. Look at that. I was also listening to my guest this week. Yep, Jason Isbell. Now, I got to give some background about this. For years, that's plural, years, meaning multiple, people have been like, you know what? You got to get Jason Isbell on. Oh, you know what? Have you heard of this dude, Jason Isbell? Oh, you remember the Drive-By Truckers? What about Jason Isbell? Oh, man, it'd be so great. You should get Jason Isbell on. Oh, he did a documentary. I get it. I love the dude. I'm a huge fan. Look at that. My voice even cracked. I'm such a huge fan. But all this stuff takes time. It takes time. I'm trying my best. I'm sending those emails. And we did it, folks. We did it. It was great. I love the guy. It was a huge pleasure and honor to talk with him. It was great, too, because there was a few times we were supposed to chat, and then something came up. He had to reschedule. I think at one point I even had to reschedule. I mean, it was crazy. But this was right after. I mean, I think like a day or so after he had won, I think his 6th Grammy. I should know this for a fact. I think it's 6. Yeah. He's, so the dude's riding high, as he should be. And, it was just a really good chat. We chat about wearing cool hats in the carpool line, listening to music with his daughter, which was awesome, loving Randy Newman, playing in front of Paul McCartney, fast fashion, wearing Rick Owens with the fam. And yes, we talk gear. We talk Dumble amps. One of the most requested pods in the making. But we did it. Jason Isbell on Blammo. Let's go.
Yeah, the best thing a Grammy can do is allow you to buy some more shoes.
Yeah, well, how have things been going lately? I mean, your whole life is like a nonstop whirlwind with obviously the film, but then previously before that you had the documentary, and then obviously the music. I mean, how are you finding time to just disconnect?
It's madness. I don't have a lot of time to do that. But I have an 8-year-old, and we hang out a lot together, and it's a kind of a perfect situation for me because she occupies the part of my brain that would drift into logistics if she wasn't around. And also, I don't have to be anything when I'm with my kid other than who I am, and that's very rejuvenating for me. But since she's been going to regular school for a little while now, so I have to shift my hours. Like I went to sleep at 10 o'clock last night. It's really weird. And I got up at like 6:30 to take her to school, and it feels so strange because first thing I'm doing is trying to figure out a fit, and then I'm like, I'm just driving to school and driving back. I don't need to put this much time into it, but the caffeine hasn't hit my brain yet. And so I'm going through different combinations of clothes. I'm like, what are you doing? Just put on some pants and take your child to school.
No, this is, you've achieved nirvana, because I think at the end of the day, what you realize, and I say this as I have 2 kids. I have a 6.5-year-old and an 18-month-old. And now living in the Midwest and kind of commuting back here, it's all about getting fits off for the carpool line. This is it.
That's it.
I live to, you get a nice piece of outerwear and I walk her up for about 30 seconds and a bunch of people in Under Armour stare at me, wonder what I'm doing. I see her off.
Man, I was at my grandmother. my grandmother recently passed, and I was
I'm
at
sorry
her
to hear that.
funeral. Thank you. I mean, it's my grandma. I'm 44 years old. I was very lucky to have a grandmother for that long. But
Yeah.
I was at the funeral, and my aunt, she says that somebody at my grandfather's funeral 8 months previously had mentioned what I was wearing, in a way that, like, well, doesn't he look fancy, And
Right.
I said that my Under Armour was dirty. I didn't have my camouflage like everybody else at the damn Alabama funeral, so I had to wear a black suit.
Oh, woe is
Yeah,
me.
please forgive me. Please forgive me for wearing a black suit to a funeral. But yeah, it is about the problem with the carpool line is if you don't get out of the car, then you're tempted to put on a cool hat. And the cool hat temptation is the worst. That's the worst possible thing that you can be tempted by as a man who's trying to look, cool. There's the cool hat it's hen's teeth, man. It's so rare. There's like 3 cool hats in the world, and the rest of them are like total shit.
So it's funny you mentioned cool hats. So I have, which I literally took off before this pod, and I wear in New York a lot. And so it's this ice cream company called Ted Drew's.
Yeah.
It's this St. Louis local, ice cream place. And I love it because it's an ugly hat. It's a weird yellow. It's got red and green on it. It's weird, but it always kind of like dresses down different outfits I have. And it's kind of been like my little signature yellow hat. But when I'm in St. Louis, I wear it and people are like, "Oh, so you work at Ted Drew's?" And I'm like, "No, dude, I'm trying to be cool."
I'm being cool.
I'm like, no, this is cool.
It's like an Alabama hat anywhere except for where I grew up. It's really cool. If I
Crimson
wear it
Tide.
back home, it's just like, yeah, I've got one of those on too, buddy. And my friend Chris Tompkins, who lives here in Nashville, and he's a songwriter. He's written like 15 number 1 country songs. He has a different Alabama hat for like like if he wears a suit, he has a nice clean Alabama hat, and it like he switches them out. Yeah. So it's not, it's not a flex at all in that part of the world. But if I'm in Paris, and I'm wearing Celine and I have on an Alabama hat, it's extra cool all of a sudden.
Yeah, that is really interesting. Yeah. How has, this been with your daughter? So for me, I just hit this age now and my daughter hit this age where now, one, she's aware of music and she's asking me. So in the house, we play a lot of Van Halen. We play a lot of Beatles. I really try to indoctrinate them in a way. Obviously, a lot of your music. And there's, I'm trying to explain to them how
kids love sad old white men.
No, in a weird way, yes. But I was trying to explain to her the Who and how they, and she was like, "Well, why would they destroy their stuff?" But the bigger question that I'm getting at is like, how has your daughter's curiosity of music and understanding yours affected the way that you compose it?
Well, before she actually started getting around other children, it was perfect because then we listened to the Beatles and Townes Van Zandt and that kind of stuff. But once she started getting around other people, then my control over that completely went out the window. Gratefully, I'm very happy about it though, because she does have taste, and it's like she's 8 now. So it's really sort of formed over the past 2 or 3 years. And there are certain things that she very clearly likes and dislikes. And she speaks Spanish. Her nanny, who was her private teacher for a while, speaks Spanish. So that's just how they talk to each other all the time. I do not speak Spanish. Yeah, I don't speak Spanish at all, but I listen lately it's been the Caliucci's record just constant, because it's like, I have no idea what she's saying. I'm sure it's very sexual and beautiful, but it's kind of like Sigur Rós to me. It's like the voice just becomes another instrument, And I'm never listening to Rosalia thinking that's a stupid lyric, because I don't know if it is or not. I got no clue. It all sounds equally beautiful to me. Carol G, Becky G, more Carol G than Becky G these days. Demi Lovato, she doesn't sing in Spanish much, but Mercy loves Demi. That We Have to Start the Day Off with Confident by Demi Lovato. And a couple of Octobers ago, we had finished our run at the Ryman, and we'd done like 2 weeks of shows there. And I told Mercy I'd left a guitar in the dressing room, when in fact Demi was playing at the Ryman. So I took her in, and it was Demi. It wasn't like my dressing room anymore. They'd switched it over, and Demi was there. She was so sweet, and she would point at Mercy in the crowd and wave during her favorite songs and stuff. First of all, I thought these Hot Topic bitches were going to murder my child. They were like, "How do you know her?" I was like, "She is 7, dude. There's no whatever she's doing, you're not going to be able to do because she's 7 and you're 25." But it was so sweet. And then actually I ran into Demi after the Grammys the other night and got to thank her again for that, because it was beautiful. But this is what I'm listening to lately. It's a bunch of pop music that I wouldn't normally, and that might have been risky for me at 25 or 30 years old, because there's sometimes when you're that age, you get into something and you think you have to try to let it, filter into your work in a way that's a little too heavy handed. But I'm 44. I made a lot of records. My records are going to sound like mine. And the only thing really that might be affected is I might pick up a little bit of a better knack for the melody and construction of songs. And I'm super grateful for that. I like Tate McRae, which I call the hockey pop girl, because she's from Calgary and she's wearing all this hockey shit. It's hilarious, but the songs are strong. They're really well built and, interesting. So lately it's been a whole lot of pop. And then when I'm by myself, I listen to that Caliucci's record, because it sounds like Sade. It's beautiful.
Right. I think that's a thing that's been really interesting for me, especially at this age we're at now, where in terms of the digital streaming world, the newness, and I'm kind of air quoting that, of music, it is just across the board, where people are discovering Steely Dan the same time they're discovering you and discovering, Grateful Dead and, Olivia Rodrigo. And it, a part of me is okay, I used to be I worked in the music industry for a long time. I worked at Beggars for a bunch, which is how I knew Jen and other folks. But I have really tried to peel back my own cynicism and elitism in music and try to find some way to celebrate this. I'm okay, this is great. If you want to know someone's influences and dig in, it's all in front of you.
It's right there.
But I'm well, the joy of discovery, and this is a thing where I wrestle with a lot, and I'm not projecting, but I used to really love the work required to find new music, especially Wax, where I would be well, look, you want to talk, fine, you're into Rockin' Horse. All of a sudden I get into Light in the Attic, LPs and stuff, and really love how much work was required to discover new music. Mm-hmm. And now it's just easy, and there's this level of appreciation. And so I'm trying to also understand that there's a time where now it's also easy to discover you, right? Yeah. It's you don't have to, obviously your distribution stuff, but you don't have to dig as much to find these things. And so if it's very easy to discover, and there's no work, it makes me wonder well, how does that shape the experience of it? I don't know.
I think it goes back to the material and the songs and the purpose for the songs, And it may not take you a long time to find my music, but it's going to take you a long time to really appreciate it, I think. You can get there quickly, but it's not the kind of music that's going to reward you completely on the first 2 or 3 listens. And that's not a statement of value. It's sometimes I don't want to listen to heavy shit. Obviously I listen to a lot of things that aren't heavy. But chances are I won't be returning to a lot of those records in 5 or 10 years. And, used to be the process of finding something sort of fit in with the process of understanding it and appreciating it. Now those are separate. Now it doesn't take that long to build. Doesn't take that long to build the fire. That means you need to put more time into the cooking the meat. I bet barbecue was terrible when people had to use flint rock to make the fire, because they did so much work. It's I just want this to not kill me. It doesn't matter what it tastes like. But cooking didn't happen until fire was really easy.
Yeah. Fair. Okay.
We now have the opportunity to focus more on the meal and the presentation of it, because it didn't take so long to get the fire started.
Yeah. For me, as I listen and discover music, so I'll find things and I'll listen to it on my phone, and then I'll listen to it on the car on occasion. But then I got, only maybe the past few years, I got a really high-end DAC, and I got some really nice headphones, and then I sit and I'll experience a record from start to finish.
Yeah.
and I want to hear it, the highest possible quality. So it's either wax or, I'm listening at 24-bit. I want to hear your fingers slide across the frets. I want to hear the Dumble. I want to hear all the gear on there. And man, it's heavy. There's stuff where, there's even just like, I've heard Run With Our Eyes Closed like a gajillion times, but like hearing some of these things when you hear The Room.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
What the hell? I mean, it's emotional. Like, I mean, and going back to, I listened to Blood on the Tracks again the other day, and you're just like, just knowing all the stuff that goes into it. I mean, it's like, as I listen to music now and I tell people, like, it's an extremely emotional, like draining experience. Like it taxes you, and I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, if you commit yourself to listening as an activity, I mean, we used to get real high and do that. You get real stoned and listen to records, and being real stoned.
That's a current thing for me right now.
I think a lot of people are doing this. I would do it too if it didn't make me want liquor, but I think, you get real stoned and it encourages you to stay put until you got through the side of you're not going to get up and skip around because you're not going to get up at all. Having to flip the record over sometimes is a lot of work, when you're that high.
Yeah.
But I still have, like psychedelic experiences, just listening to music. And I think because I'm not listening to music in order to do something else, the activity is listening to the music and listening to records. And I think for that reason, I might not actually listen to music as often as, a typical listener does, because if I'm getting ready for an event, if I'm, going to a football game, I'm not pre-gaming by listening to country records. If I'm going to listen to country records, I'm going to sit down and listen to some fucking country records. And that's what I'm going to be doing.
Yeah.
I think it's more rewarding, but it also, you wind up spending less time with music just sort of playing in your life in the background.
Yeah. I mean, because there's stuff that's like, look, fine. You want to put on the Trolls soundtrack, Harriet, like you can have it on while we're making dinner. But there's other stuff to where, and this is, I'm curious now, where it's like, a lot of your writing process has been exposed in an amazing way. And I think it's created a really beautiful, empathetic relationship with your listeners and your work. But are there things that you've, when you try to take a minute to go away, or like, is there a song or is there an album that you listen to kind of reset or get your mind right when you're writing?
Like Gillian Welch, I'll go back and listen to like Time the Revelator or Soul Journey or really any Gillian Welch record. And partially, I think that's to get my mind right. But also, I like to ask myself, why would somebody take this record off and put yours on? Every time I go to sit down and write, I think, or if somebody comes to me with something, they're like, you got to listen to this new so-and-so album. I'm like, should I take Sticky Fingers off the record player and listen to that? And very often they'll go, well, I don't know about that. I was like, well, that's what's on the fucking record player. And I know what's going to happen when I play it again. So if it's going to be worth my time, it needs to be worth me taking Sticky Fingers and putting it back in the sleeve and sliding it in the slot and putting this record on. And so when I go to write an album, I listen to somebody like Gil because it's like, well, this is already here, and for me to purchase some of your attention and some of your time, this is sort of the standard, that I have to try to match as far as just telling stories and getting to the heart of emotions,
Yeah. Do you like set that as ways that you feel like you need to challenge yourself? Or is it more of like a way to just pull something out of your brain?
It's both. I think what I consider to be the best examples of songwriting are inspiring. And inspiring is tricky because, like, if I see Steve Vai play the guitar, it's not necessarily inspiring.
Nice.
It's not very inspiring. It's beautiful. It's amazing. It's impressive. But I don't think I want to go learn how to do that because I think it's going to take me a year, to learn how to do just that one run that he just did. Songwriting's different because when you like let go of the ego and you have no need to prove anything, then you try to express things in terms that are conversational. And when that happens, you hear the song and you think, I could do that. And that's when, to me, that's when I'm inspired. When I think, oh, those words are there. I just haven't found them yet, not this person's pulling off some kind of mysterious magic trick. The process to me, shouldn't be hidden. I think that's kind of another exercise of the ego is when you start saying there's all this magic involved and, you're catching lightning in the bottle or you're just a conduit or whatever. I think basically you're saying, I need to make what I'm doing seem more special than it is. And it's not. At some point, somebody just sat down and thought, man, I bet it would be fun if I made these words longer, and maybe
Yeah.
made some noises with this object that I think I can control. And maybe that would help me to remember where the food is or where the bear is so I don't get eaten, and it really is that simple. And I think it should feel inclusive in the way that, you hear a really good Randy Newman song, you don't hear the work. It doesn't sound like he's gone through a lot of steps to get there. He probably has. But by the time it gets to you, you think, oh, this is just an old man talking.
That's a deep cut, Randy Newman. I think he's one of the most underrated American composers ever.
Greatest, one of the greatest of all time. Yeah. A handful.
Who turned you on to Randy Newman? I don't feel like that is in the lexicon of most musicians.
We got way into it when I was in my early 20s in the Drive-By Truckers van, because when they did Southern Rock Opera, right before I joined that band, I think Good Old Boys was sort of a lodestar for them, because that was, Good Old Boys was kind of a Southern rock opera of sorts. And I think that was one that Patterson was returning to pretty frequently. So we listened to it a lot in the van, and it just knocked me on the ass, because it sounds like, somebody just found those words or overheard those conversations. And that kind of set me in the direction that I've been on ever since, which is, things take on so much more meaning and so much more depth if they're not songwriterly and they're not all that impressive just as word to word.
Mm-hmm.
If you overhear something in a bar, and it really hits you in the right way, you'll remember it for the rest of your life. If you hear it at a lecture at a university, it just blends in with all the other smart people shit you've heard over and over.
Yeah. So it's funny you said that. So I did, I moved to New York ages ago and came here to be a musician and was, I was in a band and I'm a guy who I grew up playing a bunch in my church, played guitar, piano, mandolin, all that stuff. And, and then did a bunch of classes at Berkeley in Boston, really trying to think that was going to unlock the secret to get there. And when I, got to meet other people and a lot of people who had left Berkeley or had been around there, and you realize so much of it was just soul, and to which it wasn't that okay, you need to compose, this triad fits perfectly through here. And you recognize there was so much more emotion in music and what we connect with, even nonsense lyrics of the Beatles, right? Obladi, obla, that was not some, oh, thank God he took that class at Berkeley that taught him that. And there's no shade on those things, but what I always find myself connecting with are things that are, from the soul. It sounds kind of trite, but it's true. And Randy Newman stuff, especially when you realize a lot of that stuff was satire and trying to attack and point out the hypocrisy of current political things and things like that were happening, like Newman stuff.
Oh yeah.
God, it hits. It hits so hard.
It's heavy. But, I feel like it really, once you figured out the perspective shift, once you have some access to the soul of what you're trying to create and you think, oh, the secret is just to look at everything really closely and figure out or ascribe meaning to it. Once you've done that, then having that education really does come in handy, because Randy can read music. Randy spent time, his family has close to 30 Oscars now, because his
absurd.
His uncle and his dad and his son actually does movie music at WME. But he's an educated musician and he could play things way more complicated. But to have that background, you know why. And when you're looking for an idea, that's when it really, really comes in. When you need a bridge, when I wrote the Bridge to Traveling Alone, I thought, I want something unexpected. I want a left turn, almost concrete, because it's a driving song. I want something that doesn't feel natural until it's resolved. And I knew, mathematically, theoretically, where to go, what my options were in that situation. That song is very simple. The chorus is a very simple, very emotional thing that anybody could have written. But when you get to that bridge, it really helped me to have a musical education, at least enough that would lead me to, being able to put what I wanted to do into words. I mean, Gillian was at Berkeley. She came down here with Pat as part of the songwriting class, and that's what made her want to stay from how the story goes. So it's I think if you expect that kind of education to unlock everything for you, then you're gonna sound like, contemporary Christian music forever, no matter what you're trying to do. You're gonna be staring. So
you're not
at
a Phil Keaggy fan?
Feels good, but that was early, man. That was early. That was and the GOAT, Amy Grant. Yeah, I mean, she made
Art in Motion, dude.
She made that a popular type of music, but there was more than just an education behind that. Like, they were singing for a purpose higher than themselves, which is what we're doing in the secular forum too. It's just, you don't have to accept this purpose as being the same. It can be God or sex or love or pain or whatever.
Yeah, that's interesting. My dad was a musician for a long time, doing the kind of CCM style stuff. And he played a lot with, and I never realized this until he got older. He's in an assisted living home, and he's been suffering from Parkinson's for a long time, and it's just not who he was. But maybe the past few years, I've been discovering a lot of his other music, and it slaps. And, and learning that, like, my mom was like, oh yeah, he was playing a lot with Dan Peake. And I'm like, from America? And she was like, oh yeah. And I'm like, what? And it's, there's stuff there. Cause like in a weird way, my dad's whole mission with his music was like, yeah, I want to write, I don't know if you're a J.R.R. Tolkien or C.S. Lewis fan, but both of them would discuss with each other, while C.S. Lewis was like, you need to make your art tell more people about Christianity. And Tolkien was like, no, I am a Christian and I'm just going to make my art. And because of who I am, it's just going to exist. I'm not on a mission. I'm just going to be an artist.
I want to tell them about war. I want to tell them about World War I. And then they'll find God or not through that. Yeah.
But my dad was always kind of on the Tolkien side of just like, in the sense he would just write music, and sometimes there would be stuff and like, oh, it's kind of religious, is it not? Whatever, but pretty cool. It's a nice little Toto-esque looking solo you got there on the keys. But I've been discovering that stuff more lately and really trying to understand more of like where his head was at. I don't know. I think about that a lot. But yeah, when you said that kind of triggered some memories.
It's hard. The line, man, it's really, really hard in any type of entertainment for me. Because the way I grew up was in a religious place, around religious people, but this was not prosperity gospel. This was survival gospel. And I have a hard time reconciling, serving God versus serving yourself, so much so that I'll just go ahead and say, I want to be rich and famous and make rock and roll. I'm not going to pretend like I'm doing it for anybody else, because I think there's some real kind of blasphemy of the Holy Spirit happening, when you pretend that you're doing something for God, but you're, flying around on a private jet and stuff. I can't.
No,
I
agree.
think those things are wrong separately, but I think if you sell them as a package deal, you're going to get the sharpest pitchfork in hell.
I mean, you just summarized why a lot of people have walked away from churches in general, is because there's people's behaviors often are in direct conflict with the scripture or whatever that they're trying to read. I grew up very overchurched and have had my own sort of situation trying to understand what that means, especially as a parent now, and like, well, should I do this? Well, I don't want to. Is it my imposing? I'm not saying that I know the answers, but I think that there's more stuff that's visible that I think has raised more questions for me than just accepting put a Bible on it.
Go for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
All of the dogma of it all. I mean, it is an old question. It's one that Catholics and Lutherans and, it's like, well, if we have this beautiful building where people can come and experience the architecture and the cathedral, then they're more likely to commit themselves to God. And there's some of that I understand, but that doesn't hold up when you're putting softball fields and stuff in, at the mega. That doesn't quite, I don't know, buddy. I don't know that that's helping. There's other places to play softball. I think if you're walking past people who don't have a place to sleep in order to get into your church to bathe in wealth and riches, then you may have jumped the shark.
Yeah.
That's just my personal opinion on that. I see religion and spirituality as a small personal thing that, when it's at its best, it is committed to helping people survive and feel free. And outside of that, I think if you want to show off, you go be Elton John. Don't pretend that it's for somebody else.
Yeah, I mean, I wholeheartedly hear you. Like, I think there's a lot to that. I mean, for me, I'm just like, look, just go be around a community of people who are gonna love you for who you are and try to push you in a better way and make you a better person.
And accountability's huge.
There you go. Yeah.
Like, it's really good for us psychologically to have people that we could let down, Like when people call me and they're like, my son's just getting out of rehab or something, what do I do? First of all, I don't know. I'm not, licensed to do any of that. But if you want my advice for that, I say give them some real responsibility. It's a risk. It's a risk if you do that. If you're like, I need you to pick so-and-so up from school every Wednesday afternoon, they might not do it. But if there's no risk, then there's no reward. And when you give somebody that accountability and really make them feel needed, in a lot of cases, they'll rise to the occasion. It rarely helps to say, I'm here for you, whatever you need. That never fucking helped anybody. That did the opposite. That's the opposite of helping, because then people are like, oh, okay, well, then there's another safety net.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I imagine you probably get exposed to that quite a bit more as you're open and transparent with your own journey and sobriety. I mean, congratulations on 12 years, by the way.
Thank you.
That's a big deal. Did you get your coin?
No, I got to get my coin and I got to get my tattoo. I've got my 11 tattoos here. I got to get one more. But awesome. No, I'm going to tell you the truth. This is the longest I've sat down for in a week, because the Grammy stuff was constant. I had a couple of tributes to play, and my voice wasn't in great shape. And then
you were sick earlier on tour.
I was sick, and and then I get up there to sing "Wanted Dead or Alive" at the Bon Jovi Music Care tribute, and I look down, which I should know better than this, but there sits Paul McCartney and Bruce Springsteen right in front of me, and I just looked right into their faces, and I was terrified. I was scared. I got nervous, which is like bizarre. I'm not used to being nervous, but I think it helps because there was so much trouble in here that, like, singing extra hard pushed it all out. I think the adrenaline from looking at Paul McCartney's face got me through that performance.
That is pretty dope. That's cool.
It was a lot, man. It was a lot. I was like, that's shit. And he was like, Paul was this unannounced guest. Bruce was the announced guest. So
it's already a lot.
Unannounced guest.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's like 4 people in the world it could have been, and he was one of them. But all of that went well. I had a great time, and then I got home, and, I got my daughter and got her up and got her to school today, and it's just been like go, 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 pretty steadily. I did something yesterday. I don't remember what I did, but it was pretty.
You gotta. Hopefully, you're getting some time to take care of yourself. I mean, I want to definitely jump on the clothes stuff, because I think for a lot of folks, from musicians and other folks in the fashion industry, and our mutual buddy Will, like there's people listen to your music and a lot of stuff, but then there's also like, wait, that dude's rocking some Viz shoes on that, or wait a second, what dude's got some Capital on that set. Like, when did you start to get more into clothes?
I've kind of always been into it. I got way more into it when I could afford it.
Touche.
Because it didn't do me any good to be into that shit before. Because then I would just be sad. People say that a lot. I'm so happy to see you getting into fashion. Basically, what they mean is, I'm glad you're not broke anymore, because I was always into it. And I would always try to find cool things, that didn't look like what everybody else was wearing. Like, I remember, my first European tour, I bought this pair of like inside out Air Force Ones. You remember when they were doing that? They were like stitching them inside out.
Yeah.
I got those in Amsterdam, and I wore them for a couple of weeks until I got back in the States, and I got to St. Louis, and I took the bartender at this club back to the hotel with me. She threw up all over those shoes. And the next morning, I just left them there. I was like, maybe the house cleaner will clean them up and keep them for their kid or something, because it was so disgusting, the things we do for love. But it's always been an interest. It's just never been something I've been able to indulge. until this point. And I think, if you get to a certain point, now obviously all this is relative and you can put your money and your interests in other places, but I don't think you should have a closet full of Shein and Forever 21, if you can afford to have the real stuff. Because you need, if it's possible for you to wear clothes that people are getting paid to make, I think that's a good thing. And if you can wear clothes that are going to last for a while, and not wind up in a landfill somewhere, I think that's a good thing. So I finally got to the point where my closet is all pretty good stuff that I'll have for a few years.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you said that because I have, I'm not a fan of Shein, and I'll say this, where when someone's like, check it out, I got, 8 sweaters, 4 pairs of pants, and it's cool because I just need it for the week and I paid $14. There's a human capital that gets someone's paying that. And there's definitely a human capital expense that happens. And it's funny because I think a lot, like I got into clothes for my grandpa. And I remember, my grandpa, old Italian dude, and I was like, Mom, how many suits did he have? Or how many? She's like, well, he just had a couple. And I was like, really? And I'm like, oh yeah. Because it cost so much. That was his suit. That was his sweater. It wasn't like me. And even, I'm not a wealthy individual, but I've managed to make enough to get a couple sweaters here and there that I'm like, oh yeah, when it was just one or a couple things, you really took care of it. It was precious to you. And I think, sometimes I lament a little bit about people's, just having something for a weekend, like I'm just air quoting that. Where it's like, I just need it for tonight. I'm like, no, like there's got to be a way that like, what if you just invest a little more or and it's tough because I want to find a way to do it without sounding that like, well, if you don't have money, you can't have good clothes. But I think the knowledge and working towards that is really important to understand.
Yeah. And at a certain point, I mean, if you don't have a certain amount of money, you're just going to have to do the best you can with whatever you've got.
Absolutely.
But at a certain point, you do get to make some decisions. And if you're less interested in, a shortened attention span way of dressing, and you think, well, like, for example, people started re-wearing things over the past few years a lot more on red carpets and at events. And this is fantastic. Like, it makes no sense to me that, somebody like Jennifer Lawrence would need a different dress every time. Like, I get it, the paparazzi, the photos, the Getty, all that. But this lady's going to look beautiful in anything that she finds to wear, and she's always going to look great. And eventually it works another trick. Like, was it Tobey Maguire that just started wearing the same thing every day? Just because the paparazzi would lose interest to be like, well, there's another picture of Tobey Maguire in that shirt. Leo does it too.
Jeremy Allen White's doing the same.
Yeah, it's fantastic because then it's like you're actually relying on more of who you are and your human experience to tell somebody a story about you rather than just, I've got this different expensive thing on every. I like to look good. It gives me more confidence. I see it more as a flag than as a shield. It's always been a way that I have set myself apart from the rednecks that I grew up around in Green Hill, Alabama in the 80s. But at the same time, I think that it should be a doorway into who you are as an individual, rather than just the entire facade.
Do you think you're at a point now where you're experimenting less and you're more kind of like you found your style?
Yes. I mean, I don't know if it means I'm experimenting less though. Because I think my style allows for experimentation. Now not in ways that call attention to, the clothes on first glance. But I like anything that makes you stop. Like the first time you see it or the first time you hear a song or read a line in a novel, you just go through it quick and then you go, oh, wait, hold on. There's something there that I missed. And you go back, and I try to write songs that way and I try to wear pants that way,
Yeah.
Cause it's like
the double take.
I don't want to immediately catch everybody's attention, but I want something to be just a little bit different. It's like cars. It's like you see a beautiful car, and you think, man, a lot of that money's going to the designers, because there's no reason, technically and mechanically why a Kia can't be as beautiful as a Ferrari. It doesn't cost more to make a car that is beautiful looking. It just costs more to get people to do that job, And I think that's the difference. Like the jeans that I'm wearing now, they look basically just like Levi's, unless you look at them for 30 seconds. And then you're like, hold on a minute. That's a little bit better than how it should. That's what interests me. And that means I can get away with something a little bit crazy every once in a while. But it is all situational. I keep myself in many worlds at once. And I'm not going to go visit family members, in Alabama wearing Rick Owens,
Yeah, I actually made that mistake.
Maybe the shoes, maybe the Vans,
The dark shadow?
Because they won't. Yeah, they won't notice, but I'm not going to go down there with my crotch dropped down to my knees to see my Aunt Crystal for the weekend.
So I literally had that happen to me. I'm a kind of guy for myself. Like I don't really know how to just dip my toe in. I'm whole hog, right? And so I was really into Rick for a while. And I remember, I was wearing a skirt, and this is like 2011. I had like just gotten married, and my in-laws were coming into town. And my wife was like, maybe you don't wear the skirt to dinner. And I was like, what do you mean? I mean, come on. I was like, babe, this is Rick. This is Rick, babe. And she was just like,
yeah.
So yeah, I'm learning.
Well, maybe they're learning. Maybe they need to learn. Maybe you don't need to learn. Because that's the most beautiful thing to me about crazy fashion is it's arbitrary. It's like all tattoos that aren't like racist. It doesn't fucking matter. If I have a cow tattooed on my cheek, this is not going to like affect your interaction with me in any way. It's just there. So you'll have a preconceived notion that I can later work to prove that might not necessarily be true. That's the beautiful thing about wearing ridiculous clothes.
Yeah.
But then you have to consider, like, what do I want these people to think, if anything? Like, if I'm walking around in Balenciaga now, people are thinking this old man's trying to look younger than he is. And that we can't have.
Yeah.
We can't have that. I can't be wearing the, sneakers that are this big and the big rubber boots and all, it's fun. I'm glad it exists, but I do have to kind of dress like an adult because I don't want people to think that I'm trying to, sneak in the club and creep them out.
Yeah. You don't want to look like you're playing Fortnite in real life. Like,
no. Unless you're that age and you're playing Fortnite,
that's fine.
Go for it. If you want to look like Bella Porch, look like Bella Porch. But that's not going to work for me. They're going to see through that real quickly.
So, I want to be conscious of time. We got a little bit of time left, but you're kind of wrapping up on a lot of this stuff in terms on, the marathon of press stuff from Killers of the Flower Moon, which, I know you've done tons of interviews like that, so we'll skip that for this pod. But, how are you going to just detox yourself and unwind? And, are you going to pick up golfing all of a sudden? Or are you immediately going to go back and start writing? What's the way that you can have your time?
I stop enough on my walks to need to golf. I already have a good number of stops. I don't need to stop and hit something every 10 minutes. I'm not a golfer. Probably because I didn't grow up in the golf,
I'm not
tax
a golfer.
bracket.
Yeah.
But, my buddy Jamie Johnson, he grew up right down the street from a golf course in Montgomery. And they were always shitty to him when he was a kid because they didn't have a lot of money. So as an adult, he bought the golf course, but then COVID hit, so he lost his ass because nobody was coming to play golf there. And we were writing a song together later. He said, "Brother, I got to tell you, one piece of advice: never buy a golf course out of spite." It's like, okay, I'll keep that in mind, But I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to go play some regular, normal rock and roll concerts with my rock and roll band because this is the most relaxing, rejuvenating, rebuilding thing for me in the world. It's my favorite thing to do is go out and just play shows that aren't special guest tribute to weird, award shows, whatever. Just go play my songs with my band and the lasers and the gong and the fog machine and actually feel like I'm doing what I set out to do. I'm very much looking forward to that. And that starts next week.
So, well, that being said, I do got to ask about the gear and this famed Dumble. Because and I'll kind of paint if you want to explain what a Dumble is, that's fine. But I didn't know if you were a 2 Rock guy or what. But all of a sudden, you got gear that is already in the Hall of Fame. I mean, separate from you entering there.
It's good stuff.
Yeah.
It's good stuff. And I don't need it, but I want it.
That's fine. Yeah, I agree.
I could go out and play a show with a Blues Junior and a
great
4-pedal board. Great amp. Really underrated amp. And a 4-pedal board and, one telly, and it would be fine and nobody would be missing anything except me. But there's this thing about, like, when we went to record at RCA, technically you're capable of doing almost all that stuff in somebody's basement. And there's a lot of basement studios, but you go record in RCA and you walk in the room and you think, I better do something worse as shit, because that's where Dolly did I Will Always Love You and Jolene. And that's where, Waylon did Only Daddy That'll Walk the Line. And, that's where Ray Charles made the country and western album. And, you feel this, like, maybe I don't belong here, but I got to do whatever I can to prove that I do. Yeah. And if you're on stage with a 1959 Les Paul running straight into a Dumble, you think to yourself, if I don't do something cool here, I'm going to look like a serious idiot. I really have to, like, this guitar and this amp will do everything that I can do and then some. It's like my laptop. Like, I do Zooms and I do emails. Yeah. I'm not using the full processing power of the MacBook Pro. Yeah. That's how it is on stage with this gear, and the thing about the Dumble, there's not a learning curve like I expect. I had heard a few of them, played through a few of them before. But really, the difference is all of the knobs work. That's the best way I can put it. And that's how I judge a good piece of musical gear. Like on the Red Eye on the 1959 Les Paul, you turn the tone knobs and it sounds very different from number to number. And that's what I really fall in love with, because if you got a Les Paul that'll do that, you can make it sound like a lot of different things. And with that Dumble, if you bump the mid-range up just a little bit, you're getting a very different sound. Plus, it's a lot of that amp, and that what we've done in the past sometimes is rely on an underpowered speaker and push it too hard with the wattage from the amp to make the speaker drop and add to the gain stage that you're getting from the amplifier itself. But that's not how Dumble worked. Dumble would put a 200 watt rated, very hard, very big magnet, very firm speaker. So everything is being controlled from the circuit itself, from the head, from the actual amplifier. So you're not relying on the speaker to do anything that might be unpredictable. You can predict because you're in control of every sound that is making. It's a 50 watt head and it's a 200 watt electro voice speaker. So if you don't put the right head on there, it's going to sound like hammered shit. If you run like an old bassman through it, not good, because you need those 410s to distort in these. But with this one, you have the control. So it's basically like you're in a fighter jet as opposed to a Cessna. And it's just easy to get a good sound out of it. Like Audley Freed came over to the house right after I got that amp. This dude's played everything with everybody. Yeah. He's been around forever. He's in Sheryl Crow's band, but he was in the Black Crowes, and he had Cry of Love early on, his own band in North Carolina. And, this dude has done some really incredible shit. And he's a great guitar. And he plugged into that amp and just could not believe what was happening, because there's so much impact on each individual note. There's so much like force behind it. It's like a piano. You're hearing note. The note might be conditioned by the gain or the drive or the treble or the bass, but what you're hearing is the just real kernel of the guitar, the instrument. So when you put a great guitar through it, it's just more inspiring, because you're hearing exactly what you're doing. And it's fun. And by the time it goes through all the PA and the speakers and gets out into the audience, I don't know. They might not be able to tell the difference in that and the neural DSP image capture of it I have for backup,
Right.
But I can tell the difference.
Well, I was gonna say that's all that matters. I mean, and especially, I mean, your guitar tone is up there. I mean, it's excellent. And as a person who grew up in a recording studio and is loved to sit and analyze, the sonic, analyzing of different bands and stuff. I mean, it's phenomenal. And I think, obviously your playing's incredible too, but I'm sure having the good gear's gotta make things a little bit easier.
Well, thank you. Yes, it does. And it makes like sometimes you go on stage and no matter what you do, you can't get into that zone.
Yeah.
You're thinking, you're squeezing and you're thinking real hard about everything you play. You never can just let it sort of fly.
Mm-hmm.
But I have found that the better my guitar sounds to me, the quicker and easier it is for me to get into that zen place where I can improvise, but also keep the themes and the parts that I want to keep and just not be so consciously aware of every note that I play.
Yeah.
Like we played in the basketball arena in Oklahoma City a few weeks ago, and I was playing overseas, and it's like the Strat, and then I've got the Tweed Twin and the Vibreverb and the Dumble all going at once. And then I've got like, I think it's the Analog Man compressor that I'm using on that. And then like the EchoFix tape delay.
Yeah.
That's basically like an Echo Flex, but you don't have to work on it every day.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, which is nice. But, and I'm playing an old slab board Strat through all that stuff, and it's in the arena, and it feels like you get to be David Gilmour for a few minutes.
Yeah.
You really get that, like, oh my God, this feels like I'm in Pink Floyd playing it. So, and when that happens, you're not focused on each individual note or the timing or the intonation. You're focused on the whole experience, and you're really sort of creating and witnessing at the same time. And the better the tone gets, the easier it is for me to get to that point where I'm making something and also watching something be made.
Yeah. Do you ever watch your game tape? You go back and look at your previous shows or listen and analyze, or is it just
I'll go back and listen.
Yeah.
It's not a pick apart thing though. It's just like, cause it's awesome. It's always awesome.
Yeah.
I just go back and I'm like, dude, their fucking front of house guy killed it. And then I text him at 2 a.m. It sounds unbelievable. Never
we got to
do
get
I
you
go
on
back and
Nugs.
see it and think, I know. But, no, I never go back and think I need to do this differently or somebody else does, because that moment's gone. And if I don't notice it in real time on stage in my ear mix, then it's not a big enough deal to even mention, because I've got a pretty good mix.
Yeah. Well, Jason, I want to thank you so much for your time. I know you got a ton of other stuff today, but it really meant a lot to get to chat with you, and I appreciate your candor and being so open and talking about all sorts of stuff. So
thank you, Jeremy. It's been fun, man. It's been entertaining to talk with you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, welcome home. Congrats again on the awards, and onwards and upwards, my friend. So
thank you. I'll talk to you again sometime.
All right. We'll see you. Take care, Jason. Bye.
All right. Have a good one.
You too. Bye.
You've been listening to Blamo. Our show is produced by Blamo Media. We're edited by Amar Lowell, and our theme music, as always, by the mysterious Breakmaster Cylinder. If you like what you heard, you know the drill. Share the pod with a friend. Leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Give us 5 stars or thumbs up on whatever other thing you're listening to us on, whether it's Dingledorp or Bing Bong, whatever it's called. But you can also follow us on Instagram for all the hot content. If you want to talk to us and give us your hot take, we'd love to hear from you. You can send us an email at info@blamopod.com. Last but not least, super ultra important, if I had an air horn, I would press it right now. You got to come and join us over on Patreon, because the fun never stops over there. Look, the live show, the free show, whatever you want to call this, we take breaks here and there, but Patreon, it never stops. And we also got exclusive shows like Die Workwear, hosted by Derek Guy and Peter Zotolo, and the Triple J Show, hosted by yours truly with John Moy and Gene Deleon. There's just a ton of stuff over there. So check it out at patreon.com/Blamo. If not, no worries. We got hundreds and hundreds of free episodes in the feed, and more to come. So we will see you all soon.